morning, everybody that's joining. How are you guys this morning? This morning is going to be still working with bucket hats this week. We are going to do Granny Square bucket hat today. Monday and Tuesday, we just kind of free-handed a bucket hat. This Granny Square bucket hat will be kind of free-handed. I do have the link to the Granny Square that I'm using in my link tree if you wanted to use that same Granny Square. When I get to the point where I finished one of them, I can give you a better idea of how many stitches I have around each one of them. For those that don't know me, every morning around 9:45, Monday through Friday, I go live and I do some sort of tutorial. I try to pick one topic a week, and we stick with that topic for the week. This week's topic were bucket hats. Hello, Tyler. So, bucket hats. And today and tomorrow we're going to be making them out of granny squares. So we'll be making our bucket hats out of granny squares. I was hoping to get a little bit more than these done, but that's okay. Since we're making them out of granny squares, I will start with how to make the granny square. And then we will just go from there. So today and tomorrow, today I will at least get done making the granny squares. And tomorrow we can construct a hat, if that's as far as I get today. So, on that note, I have my colors for my granny squares. And I'm going to start with, it's not a traditional granny square that I'm making, it's a round granny square. Well, it starts round and you make it square, but it's got like these little flowers in the middle of them. And I kind of like that, so that's what I was going to go with there. So, oh, don't sub through here. Go to my YouTube channel and sub. That's my YouTube channel. So you can find my YouTube channel, you can sub there. And it is free. Alright, so granny squares. This granny square, all granny squares usually start with a circle. You can do one of two things. When starting your granny squares, you can either make a magic loop, which would be wrapping and starting your... Hey, thank you. And starting your loop and starting your stitches around your loop, and then you kind of pull it tight. This is just an example, and then you would pull the loop tight so that you wouldn't get the and it would close on top of that. That way you wouldn't get the hole in the center. Or you can just simply start with the chain 2 method. So you would chain 2 to begin your granny square. And if your first stitch, which is a double crochet, which mine is, my first stitch is a double crochet and then a chain 1. So after I made my chain 2, I would chain 3 for my double crochet. I would chain 1 for my chain 1. And then in the very first stitch that you did here, make another double crochet. So that gives you 1 double crochet, 1 chain 1, 1 double crochet, 1 chain 1, 1 double crochet in that same stitch. Now you can see we're still working in that same stitch, and we're going to work that way, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, until all the way around until we get 8 double crochets and 8 chain 1 spaces. So into the same stitch, I've chained 1, I'm going to do another double crochet. Again, I'm going to chain 1, and in the same loop, I'm going to do another double crochet. Again, I'm going to chain 1, and in the same loop, I'm going to do another double crochet. I'm going to chain 1, in the same loop, in the same center, I'm going to do another double crochet. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 so far. You can see 6 stitches there. Chain 1 and double crochet, that will give me 7. Chain 1 and another double crochet, and that will give me 8. And we do need a chain 1 space in between, so we're going to chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch to the top because I'm going to change colors. And then I'll show you what to do with that hole that you have there from your chain 2 start. Again, these videos I will upload to YouTube at NiftyKnotz, NiftyKnotz, under the playlist / podcast NiftyKnotz Talk. So you can go back and rewatch the pieces that you need to. Again, you're not getting studio quality from me, you're getting real life, and I'm just going to teach you how to crochet. Okay, so anyway, so we made our, we did a chain 2 start, which doesn't give you quite the tight center. Now, one of two things. If you don't mind that center that's a little bit open, it's absolutely fine. If you do mind that center that's open, you can always take your tail, thread it onto your needle, and then weave it all the way around your circle. So I'm going to weave it all the way around that first group of stitches. So that way I'm going to keep going all the way around to the beginning where I started, and make sure I go through all of my stitches. So all I did was weave my tail through that first set of stitches, and then when you pull it tight, because you've woven it through, you close the center like you would close a magic ring or a magic loop. So you don't necessarily have to know how to do that magic ring or that magic loop to start something. You can start with your chain 2 method as well. I will say, regardless of whether or not you use a chain 2 method or whether you pull it through this way, you always have to knot it somewhere to secure it, because even with a magic ring or magic loop or whatever terminology you use, it will come undone if you don't secure it some way. So I just tied a knot there, and then I will then just weave the end in again to go around. So that is the first round of our granny square. I do believe there are 4 rounds. That is the first round of our granny square. And if you want to just read the pattern and make the squares, I did put the link to the pattern in my link tree. Good morning. I did put the pattern to the link. I did put the link to the pattern in my link tree. So if you want to go to my profile, click on the link in my profile, you'll see a list of links, and this granny square is one of them, so that you guys can find it and follow along. I'm learning as I go. If I had that all set up on my second account, I could have actually, or on my second device, I could have done that yesterday instead of trying to like get the link to you guys in crazy ways. Yeah, so let's see here. So the next round is going to be our petals. So now our petals are going to consist of 5 double crochets and 3 chains in between. And they're going to go in between each one of these spaces here to make it look like a flower. So, on that note, I'm going to grab my yarn, and I had enough yarn to do at least my flowers from a leftover project. So it's not like you really need to have a ton of yarn to make your granny squares, because good morning, Arlene. So for the next round of this granny square, I am going to, I did weave in my ends just so that they're not cluttering up what you're looking at. Hey Arlene, did you get the message I sent you? I did see that message that you had sent me on TikTok, but there were no pictures with it. So if you want to go find my, I have a Facebook account. You can find my Facebook account and my link tree and my profile and send them to me that way if you want, because I'd love to see it. Okay. Hi, Billy Dawn. Hi, Deb. Okay, so the next round of this granny square, I'm just going to, I have my, on my hook, I'm just going to insert it anywhere, and I am going to work over the ends for this round because I can. I'm going to join it with a slip stitch in any one of those. I'm going to flip this tail over to this side so I can work over top of it. I'm going to chain 3, and that chain 3 is going to count as my first double crochet. In this same stitch, I'm going to make 4 more double crochets. So 2, 3, 4, 5. And because there's so many stitches, I can work right over that end there. This is like an easy round for weaving in ends. Okay, once you have your 5 stitches, you're going to take your loop off your hook. You're going to insert it through the first of the 5 double crochets, which would be the chain, which might be a little bit tight. So you would insert it through the first from front to back, grab your loop from the back, and you're going to then pull it through and tighten it. So you've like closed the top. I'll show you again. So you've like closed the top into a ring, and it gives you that like petal, that popcorn. So you can see, maybe I should close this curtain. It seems like the more light the better it would be, but it seems like for me with the colors, the less light the better. So you've taken those 5 double crochets. I'm going to pull this loop just a little bit longer. You've taken those 5 double crochets that you made, and you've put your loop through the first double crochet to pull it tight. Good morning, Candy. Good morning, Lemon Seals. I saw you on this morning, but I wasn't with it enough. I was trying to jump on and spam like the people that I see jump on my accounts, throw them some support. I was just kind of running out of time. I got to a few I think, but I'm getting better at not slurping my coffee. However, I can't control the swallowing. I have to get that thyroid issue taken care of. Probably sooner than later. I keep procrastinating because I just find other things that I need to do, which is probably not a good thing. Okay, on to our granny square. So after we've done our first popcorn cluster. Hey Stephanie, good morning. So after I've done my first popcorn cluster, I'm going to chain 3. And then in the very next space, and again, I'm going to work over my end. So in the very next space, I'm going to once again, after my chain 3, I'm going to put 5 double crochets right into this next stitch, or right into this next space. So right into the next space, I'm just going to do 5 more double crochets. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you can see I have my 5 double crochets. You know what, let me get rid of some of the light from the other side. Again, the more dim it is in here, it seems like the better the colors can be seen, my stitches can be seen. Which kind of makes me crazy because you guys can see them much, much better that way. Like, I could actually close the other curtains in my room too. But you would not believe how dark it actually is in here. Anyway, off subject. Okay, so now that I have my 5 double crochets in this second loop, I'm going to take the loop off my hook. I am going to insert my hook into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the first double crochet from front to back. I'm going to grab my loop from the back. So I've grabbed my loop from the back. And when you pull your loop tight enough, that you can pull it through your stitch, it's going to close the top of those 3 double crochets in like a little ring there. So those were our 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We pulled our loop through the first one. To pull it around is, you can pull it apart there and see. So we have 5 double crochets that kind of come all the way around and are attached to the first loop. So that is another, they call them popcorns. So you can see here how I've gone all the way around. I've gone all the way around and I've chained my 5. I've pulled my 5 together in a loop and then I've chained 3. And then I went to the next space and I chained my 5, or I double crocheted my 5. I've pulled them together into a loop. And then I've chained 3. And then in the next one, I've double crocheted 5 and did the same thing. So you should have 8. So you should have 8 posts around the center with 8 spaces, and then you're going to work 8 petals like that. I'll show you one more time. Again, if you guys are looking for the actual just written pattern, those of you that want to just follow a written pattern, if you go to my link tree, I did put a link to the pattern in there. It was a free pattern, so I don't feel too, when I'm doing tutorials, if it's a free pattern, I don't mind so much. If it's a paid pattern, I think it's only fair to give credit where credit's due so that you can go and like buy the pattern because somebody spent a lot of time making those patterns. And I know that because I've made patterns and it takes a lot of time. I mean, there are some patterns that took me months to write. So even if it's only $1.50 or, a couple dollars, it's still only fair to that pattern writer that they get credit where credit's due. But this was a free pattern. I did put the link in my link tree. Somebody had asked this morning about the granny skulls that I did. I did put the link to the granny skulls in my link tree as well. However, that is a paid pattern. It was $1.50, and the only part that I used from that granny skull is the actual skull part of it. If you wanted to see how I put the granny square together, that is on one of my YouTube tutorials, and it should be in the description which one it is. Okay, back to this. I'm going to then chain another 3. I'm going to go to the, and again, I'm working over my ends, because if I work over my ends, I don't have to weave them in. So I'm going to go to the next chain space, and I'm going to work another 5 double crochet in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to show you once again. So once I've done my 5 double crochets, I'm going to drop the loop from my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the first double crochet that I did, I'm going to insert my hook from the right side to the wrong side. I'm going to then pick up my loop from the wrong side, cinch it up a little bit, and I'm going to pull it through that first stitch. And that makes that loop and that popcorn and that petal. So I'm going to keep going around like that. 1, 2, 3, 5 double crochets in the next. And ultimately you will end up with 8 petals. These first 2 rounds we're working in multiples of 8. 2, 3, 4. For our pattern stitch around. So you've got 8 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 double crochets around, and then you have 8 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 petals. So that's what we want. Those 8s. How many double crochets in the first round? Oh, 8. I answered your question without even realizing it. These are double crochets, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. So there's 8 double crochets in 8 chain 1 spaces. I know, I try to pay attention to the comments. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And then we're doing the petals for it. So the petals again are chain 5, or I'm sorry, you would chain 3 counts as your first double crochet. Over here, chain 3 counts as your first double crochet. You're going to do 5 double crochets in each space. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to drop the loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to insert my hook through that first double crochet from right side to wrong side. You're looking at the wrong side now. I'm going to pick up the loop. So this is the first double crochet. This is the last double crochet you did. I'm going to pick up the loop. I'm going to cinch it a little bit tight, and I'm going to pull it through that stitch like that, and that's going to give me that circle and that petal that pops. So you can see on the one that I did, the next one, you can see how your petals kind of pop off your granny square. And this will be square after the next, this will be square after the next one. I know some of you guys have made this before. But again, I like my tutorials to be very basic and simple, so I appreciate you guys sitting through the mundane stuff, which is not so mundane to some people. We all have to start somewhere, don't we? 3, 4, 5. My 5 stitches, my 5 double crochets in that next space. Again, from front to back, I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to then pick my loop back up, cinch it up and pull it through, and then do my chain 3. So that's how it's looking from the back. That's how it's starting to look from the front. Oh, thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate it. I love coming here because I'm always learning something. Thank you. I'm out of yarn though. Hopefully I will get some tomorrow. I hope so. So, and again, I'm working over my tails because there's so many stitches here that you're not going to see the ends of the tails run through. So I'm just working over my tails, which is going to make this an easy round for weaving in. 2, because you're not going to have to. 3, 4, 5. So again, 5 double crochet in the next one, drop my loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the first double crochet you made. From front to back, you're going to insert your hook. From the back, you're going to pick up your loop and you're going to cinch it and pull it tight. Not too tight, I mean just tight enough to make that petal. And you can see my finger kind of sticks through the center of that petal there, so it's like a bobble. But they would call that a popcorn. Oh, thank you, Melissa. And Stephanie. So now that I've worked over those ends enough, that they're not going to, because I started all the way over there, so I'm just going to clip that end off. And I do like to work over my ends frequently because I don't like to go back and weave in my ends. So if I can and I have the opportunity to just work over top of them, I will. So one more. 1, 2, 3. And I have two more popcorns to make. So you can see I've put one in each one of those spaces there, and there should be 8. So I'm going to do this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Drop my loop for my hook. Put it in the first double crochet that I did, so you can see there's the chain 3. You can see there's the chain 3. Right there. That's our other popcorn. That's our chain 3. And then in the first double crochet, I'm going to insert my hook from right side to wrong side. I'm going to pick my loop back up and I'm going to draw it through closed. And then chain 3 more. And then in the last one, I'm going to do the same thing. My 5 double crochet. My 5 double crochet, insert my hook from front to back. My hair is tickling my nose. Insert my hook from front to back, pick up my loop, and pull it through to make that little popcorn there. And then my chain, actually, I'm at the last one now. If I chain 3 and slip stitch, it's going to be a little bit too big because the slip stitch is kind of going to pull out like another stitch, so it's going to look almost from the back like you've done 4 chain 3s. You can see your chain 3s all the way around, right? Chain 3 in between, chain 3 in between each popcorn. So if I did a chain 3 and I slip stitch to the top, it would pull. So that's 1, 2, 3. If I did that chain 3 and then I slip stitched to the top of my bobble, this is the back, so you can kind of see you have to catch it kind of from the back to pick up the stitch to pull it through. So you see if I do a chain 3, it makes it just a little bit longer than the rest of the chain 3s. Can you see that? So that is the chain 3 in my slip stitch. And that's the chain 3 going into the next bobble. So instead of chaining 3 and then slip stitching to the last stitch, I'm only going to chain 2. That way it's going to pull it so the space is approximately the same size. So now you can see the spaces are approximately the same size. in between those baubles. Popcorns. Those are popcorns. Whatever you want to call them. You saw how to do them. The name doesn't really matter. Like I said, if you know the basic principles and you can yarn over and hold your hook and hold your yarn and pull through a loop, it's just sequencing the stitches. These are all stitches that most everybody knows. It's just how you sequence them to put them together. So, I mean, that's just double crochet. The same stitch Tyler's hat was all the way around, just double crochet. It's just how you sequence those stitches. Okay, so for the next round, I picked green because I figured green for my for leaves for my flowers. If those of you that didn't see what the pattern ultimately looks like, and again, the link to this is in my link tree. That's what it will ultimately look like. So that's what I'm going for, is the flower there to make all the way around my hat. And this is kind of what I mean. Sometimes I will find myself a pattern just to take. I'm going to make this when I get home. Okay, good luck with your appointment. Thank you very much. It's very pretty. So pretty. Thank you. A lot of times I will buy a pattern just because I want to use a piece of it. Like this pattern, I just want to make the squares, but this pattern was just the square. For the granny totes, I purchased the pattern. Oh, I might have a couple here somewhere in my, I don't know where they went. I have a stack of granny squares somewhere that I started. Everything goes like this when I sit down to crochet. But you can see in the background for my granny, for the skull totes that I make, I bought the pattern just because I wanted the skull. Not because I wanted the pattern for the granny square, because the granny square I actually did completely different than she did her granny square. So a lot of times I'll purchase a pattern just to use part of it. Thank you, Melissa. I love the skull bags. If I do that, I will not write a pattern for that product or that project, because I don't think it's fair to put that excerpt in there because I used somebody else's excerpt from the pattern. So this, however, I will say is a standard. You could probably find 100 of these same exact patterns online because it's pretty standard, which is one of the reasons why it's just in there as a free pattern, because it's a pretty standard granny square. I know it doesn't look like a standard granny square, but it's pretty, you know, again, it's all basic. It's all how you put things together. So this floral granny square, some people make them with like 16. I think I have a bag back here that the bag back here actually did 16 petals all the way around the way we're doing them. This one here, we're just doing 8 petals, and then we're putting a round around that looks like leaves. So everything's a little bit different. Again, it's just all about how you sequence it, but you can see how that kind of pops off. And that's kind of like the round part where you pulled your 5 double crochets together. But I will say, we're going to get through these granny squares today, at least. And then I'm going to finish making mine and figure out what we're going to do with the top. Because again, like the other bucket hats, to make it fit like a bucket, you want it like perfectly round around your head, perfectly flat on the top, just like a bucket would be. So to do that, if you start with the round part, you really kind of don't get that bucket look. So I start with the band part of it and then add the top, so it gives you more of that bucket look instead of that sun hat look. And there's nothing wrong with the sun hat look, but But this week we were doing like more traditional bucket hats. I keep wanting to say bags. Those of you who haven't seen, oh, I did want to tell you, I did manage to get part 2 of the tutorial up on that podcast. So I do have part 2 of this hat up there now. So if you guys were looking for part 2, I did manage to get that to finally upload to YouTube overnight, which took like a while. I just finally just left my phone sit there and went to bed, and by the time I woke up in the morning it was uploaded and I was happy. But this was the bucket hat that we worked on for the first couple of days. So Mondays and Tuesdays tutorials for this week were this bucket hat, and it's pretty traditional. It is straight around the edges and it just has the circle on the top. So that is, yeah, finally, oh my god, 2 days later. So we're doing like a more traditional bucket hat. Wednesday we did do Tyler's hat, and that is also up. So on to the next round of this. What you doing? Okay. So on to the next round of this. And I'm going to use green because I want it to look like leaves. Pull some out here so it doesn't end up all over the place. And again, find my end. Thanks. That's so cute. Thank you. You're just going to tie your slip knot, put it on your hook, and you're going to join with a slip stitch anywhere. So in any one of those chain 3 loops, you're just going to join with a slip stitch anywhere. And I think, was I able to? Yes, I was able to, because there's so many stitches on the back and they end up so close together. I was able to work right over my tails as well so that I didn't have to really weave them in. So this round is actually going to do like 3 double crochets together. So it's more like a cluster and not what they consider a popcorn. A popcorn is when you take your stitches and you pull together all the stitches from the top. A cluster would be like your almost like an increase. So it's like half the stitch, half the stitch, half the stitch, pull through all the stitch. So a cluster is more like an increase, whereas a popcorn is more like all of your stitches, and then you pull them tight to look, to give you that raised look. Whereas a cluster is just like an increase. You can see there I have 3 stitches, and you can see at the top where I had 3 loops, maybe even 4 loops there at the bottom there, and I just pulled them all together as one. So a cluster is more like an increase, whereas a popcorn is more like a 3-dimensional bobble type stitch. So again, I'm going to join this green anywhere. So I'm going to join this green anywhere, and again I'm going to take my tail and put it over to the side that I'm going to crochet, because I'm going to crochet right over top of both of these tails when I get to them. And these are chain 3s, or I'm sorry, double crochets. So I'm going to chain 3 for my height. And to do our first cluster, you're going to wrap your yarn, you're going to yarn over and pull through your stitch. You're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and you're going to leave those last 2 loops on there. And one more time, you're going to yarn over, put it into the same space, grab your yarn, pull it through your space or your stitch, yarn over, pull it through the 2 for that stitch, and you can kind of see the definition between 1 stitch, 2 stitch, and 3 stitch. So we've worked half the stitch but left the last loop on. And that's how you would also do a double crochet increase. And then you're just going to take it and you're going to just draw through all 3 of them. And that's going to make your cluster. So you can see where we did one stitch without finishing off the last loop, 2 stitches without finishing off the last loop, 3 stitches without finishing off the last loop, and I'll show you again so that you can see it without that chain stitch. And then we just pull through all 3 of them and close that cluster. These clusters each have 2 chains in between them. So I'm going to chain 2, and this pattern starts with the cluster on with the second half of the cluster, and you'll see that when I go to the next one, or the second cluster in this stitch. So when we come and we finish this round, we're going to finish with a cluster here and then join it to here, because we're going to work 2 clusters in each space. That will then give us, where that gave us 8 petals, if we work 2 clusters in each space, that will give us 16 clusters. So in the next space, again for our cluster, we've chained our 2. You're going to yarn over. You're going to put it into the next space in between the next petal. 1 petal, 2 petals. There, that's a better angle. Into the next space for the petal, and then you're going to yarn over, pull it through your space, and that gives you 3 loops. You're going to yarn it over, and you're going to pull it through the 2 loops, and you're going to leave that last loop on the hook, and we're just going to do that again. You're going to yarn over, put it through the same space, yarn over, pull it through the stitch, yarn over, through, pull it through 2, and you're going to leave that second half of a stitch on your hook there. So one more time to give you 3 stitches, because now we have 2 half stitches. We want 3 half stitches to finish ours. So yarn over and pull it through your space, yarn over and pull it through 2 loops, and now we have 3 stitches on there. 1, 2, 3. You're going to always have a 4th. That's how you can tell. You're always going to have a 4th, because this is the loop that you started with. So now that you have those 3 half stitches on there, you're just going to yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops, and that makes the cluster. And you can just kind of slide that cluster over, because we are going to do the same thing in the same clusters, or in the same space, so that we have 2 clusters in each space. So I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to do the same thing. Yarn over, insert it into the same space, yarn over, pull up my loop. You can see, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. That gives us 1 half of the stitch. Yarn over, put it through the space, yarn over, pull it through the space, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on the hook, and that gives us the second half stitch. And we're going to do it one more time. Yarn over, put it through the same space, yarn over, pull through the space, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, and now we have 3 half stitches on there. And then we're just going to yarn over and pull through all those 3 stitches. So now I have 2 clusters in that space. So you can see how we started this space with 1 cluster, because that was our starting space. We will finish with another cluster in that space to give us 2 clusters in each space. So you can see how the flower part starts to pop over top of it. And you have your 2 clusters in between each space. I will show you for one more space, and then I'm going to work my way around here. This is actually cotton yarn, but it's the same size. It's still worsted weight. You could do the same thing out of acrylic yarn. It is the same weight as the acrylic yarn I use. All the projects that I'm going to do and almost 100% of the tutorials I'm going to do use worsted weight yarn. Whether you use cotton or acrylic or wool or whatever you choose to use, I'm going to use worsted weight, because worsted weight and whatever hook you prefer is going to be what you have in your stash if you want to follow along with the tutorial. So this is cotton, so it looks a little bit different. I mean, you really can't tell when you look close, because if I pulled up a piece of acrylic yarn, do I have a tail hanging out here? If I pulled up a piece of acrylic yarn next to the cotton yarn, there it is. It kind of looks the same, but the texture is much different. The acrylic yarn's a little bit fuzzier and probably full of polyfill. This is the cotton yarn on the bottom, and this is acrylic yarn on the top. So you can see they're the same size. So no matter what you wanted to use for your project, I'm always going to use the same size yarn, because that's like basic, like Red Heart or basic Walmart or basic Hobby Lobby or Michael's brands. Most people have acrylic worsted weight or some sort of worsted weight in their stash. So that's why I've done these with all worsted weight. On to the next set of clusters. Just like we did 2 clusters in this stitch, and you're looking at the back, that's the front. So we did 2 clusters in this stitch. We're going to go to the next space, and we're going to do those same 2 clusters. I do like the cotton texture. This cotton isn't too bad. Some cottons are really stiff and almost like sticky to work with. But I don't mind this cotton. This is Hobby Lobby's cotton, and it is rather soft. So again, after each cluster, whether it's from the second cluster or from the first cluster, you're going to chain 2. So you're always going to chain 2 after you do your cluster. And again, I'll show you one more time, and then I'm going to work around this. Yarn over, put it through your next space there in between your popcorns, yarn over and pull it through, yarn over and pull it through 2, and that gives you the first half of the stitch. Yarn over, again put it into the same space. I'm working over those strands. Put it into the same space, yarn over, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and that gives you 2 half stitches. And then one more time you're going to yarn over, put it into the same space, yarn over, pull it through your space, yarn over, pull it through the 2 loops, and that gives you 3 half stitches on there. And then yarn over and pull through all 3 of those stitches. And then you're going to chain 2. You can slide these over, because you're going to put another cluster there, just like you did here, 2 clusters in each space. And one more time, I'm going to yarn over and pull through the same loop, through 2 stitches. That gives me a half a stitch. Yarn over, pull through my space, yarn over and pull through the 2 stitches. That gives me my 2 half stitches. Yarn over, same space, yarn over, pull through those first 2 stitches, and that gives me my 3 half stitches for my cluster. And then I will just yarn over and pull through all 3 of them, and that gives me the cluster. So I'm going to continue working around just like I just did. I'm going to go to the next, I'm going to chain 2, go to the next space, do a cluster, chain 2, and a cluster, just like I did in these last one. A cluster, chain 2, cluster, cluster, chain 2, cluster, and then I'm going to chain 2. Then work another cluster, chain 2, my cluster, and now I'm going to chain 2, and do the same thing in this one. And I'm just going to continue around to do that, which I actually don't have to since I have one done. What time is it? 10:40. We have some time. And again, and I'll say it every time, you can see how it's just the sequencing of those same movements, which is hold your yarn, hold your hook, yarn over, and pull through. So now I have my 2 there. I do have like a hair. And I'm going to then do another. I think I've worked around those tails. I actually worked over those tails, so instead of weaving these tails in, I just worked my stitches right over top of them. So you can see if I pull that, it pulls it together. I just worked my stitches right over top of them. And that weaves in it enough that I can then just cut them off. Or you can keep weaving them in until, but I try to do at least a few inches, at least a few inches, if I'm going to work over my tails before I finally cut them. And that does cut down on a lot of work if you have rounds that you can manage to work over top of your tails instead of having to weave them in. What do they say? Work smarter, not harder. That's a good example. My 2, chain 2, and another cluster. Two clusters in that space. I'm going to chain 2, go to my next space. Whoops. Do my 2. Chain 2. You're chaining 2 after every cluster, whether it's in between the 2 there or in between those 2 and the next 2. Okay, so now we've done the last cluster and the last 2 clusters in the last space, and we're back to the beginning space where we have 1 cluster. You're going to chain 2, and you're just going to work 1 cluster there. So again, yarn over, pull through your space, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, through your space, pull your loop through your space, 2, yarn over, pull through your space, pull through 2, you have your 3 stitches there, and you're going to yarn over and pull through the 2. Again, you could chain 2 and then slip stitch to the top of that, but that slip stitch is going to pull and make it look a little bit too big, so I will show you. If you chain your 2 and then slip stitch to the top, it's going to still make this space look like it's much bigger than the rest of these spaces. So even though it says chain 2 and slip stitch to the top, I would just chain 1 and slip stitch to the top, because that way that slip stitch won't pull, and you can see it gives you pretty much the same size space as the rest of them all the way around. So if you chain before you slip stitch to end your round or your row, I would definitely chain 1 less, because your slip stitch will pull like that. And again, I'm infamous for to knot it off to finish my round there. I am just going to chain 2. I'm going to pull up just so I have a little bit of a tail. I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to pull that end up, and there's my chain 2. You can take your fingers and you can just pull that right down, and it creates your knot. So if you just simply chain 2 and pull your tail out and then scrunch your stitches down, it creates your knot for you. All right, so how is everybody this morning? I am going to finish the next round around it and the next round around that, because at that point I can show you how we're going to put it together for a hat. I have a better idea of how many stitches I have. Good. I'll have a better idea once I get one done how many stitches I have and how much more I have to go around it and how big of a circle I need to make for the top. So I am going to at least finish the next round and then count them, and then quite possibly another round. We'll see how many stitches are around there. I do want to say though, we did Tyler's hat, and while we were doing Tyler's hat, I had mentioned that I was going to show you an easy way to tell whether or not you have more yarn in your ball to make a second one. So I'm going to show you that now because I never did finish that. So Tyler's hat is here somewhere. I thought it was sitting right here. It could have been snatched up by somebody. I could have stuck it in a bin. Well, regardless, I need to dig in here. Oh, there's Tyler's hat. Tyler's hat and my yarn. Okay, so I'm going to just pull my clipboard out just so I have a flat surface. And this is how I would see if I had enough yarn to do. Does that work a little bit better? Maybe. See if I had enough yarn to do a second hat from the same ball. And it is a scale. So I'm going to turn my scale on. I don't know if you can see the numbers, but I like to work in grams. So you can see where it says grams. And you can see because I'm holding it at an angle, it's actually going to give you numbers. So I'm going to turn this back off. Oh, come on. Wait, leave it sit there. Will it turn itself off? There it goes. Okay. So I have it turned off. I know everything's reflecting on it. So I have my scale turned off. I'm going to take the hat that I made. This is a good way to, if you're going to use single color granny squares or even other color granny squares, you can do a round. I'm going to put his hat on top of my scale here. If your scale is not big enough to put your piece on, you can put like a paper plate or a plastic Tupperware container or something else on there that you can put it in. But you want to do that before you turn your scale on. So if you're going to put this in a Tupperware container to measure it, you would put your container on it and then turn it on so it would be 0, and then put this inside to weigh it. But I don't have, so I'm going to turn my scale on, and it's going to be on 0. So you always want it to be on 0. That's why you would put your Tupperware container, and I know you can't see the numbers, so I'll tell you the numbers. You would put your hat on, and you can see there, let me flip my camera here. If I flip the camera, I can show you a little bit better. Okay, so you can see I've taken my hat, I've put it on my scale, and I can see that I used about 37 grams for that hat. So now I'm going to take this hat off. I'm going to take my wrapper off because your wrapper will add some weight. So I'm going to take the wrapper off my yarn. And then I'm going to take the ball of yarn and I'm going to put it on top of the scale. And I have 48 grams left. 49, 47, 48. About 48. So I have 48 grams left in here. My hat took me 35. So I know with the remainder of my ball, I am going to have enough to finish another hat exactly like this. So that is a really good way to try to figure out, flip my camera back. That is a really good way to try to figure out whether or not you have enough yarn to finish your projects. I love weighing yarn because it is much more effective than guessing. And, whoops, is much more effective than guessing, much more accurate than guessing. Now I have to get off the floor. So I did mean to show you guys that yesterday and then just chattered away and forgot. So, oh, you're welcome. And you could use any kind of scale that was digital like that gave you grams. Like if you bought like a food scale, or that one's a postage scale because when I mail things out I like to know what the postage is for them. But that's a really good way to get a more accurate whether or not you have more yarn left. And you can do the same with the granny squares. Like if you're not sure how much yardage you have left, you can take your granny square and weigh it. So you would weigh this. You would do your round and weigh it again. And the difference, if this one weighed 5 and this one weighed 10, you know you used 5 grams for this. And then you would just weigh your ball and see if you had enough to make the rest of the granny squares you wanted. So you can do it just for more than a project. You can do it for rounds as well. And that's one way to know whether or not you should play that game of yarn chicken. Anyway, off track. I needed to take a drink. And then I'm going to do the next round of this granny square, and it should be easy. Let's see here. It should just be double crochets or granny stitches all the way around. It looks like it's granny stitches all the way around. And granny stitches would just be 3 double crochet in your space, 3 double crochet in your next space. For your corner stitches, it would be 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. So that would be like your basic granny stitch, which is just another sequence of stitches that we just did. So you can see how this was double crochet, this was double crochet, and this was double crochet. That's a good example of it's all the same stitch, it's just how you put it together. Okay, so on to the next round. So I can wrap this up by 11:30, hopefully. The next round, I wasn't sure if I was going to do purple or if I was going to do the same blue. Or I have pink. Maybe I'll do the pink. Maybe I'll do the purple and then do the pink for like my decorative stitches. I think I'll do that. Because there is some purple in these. There's a little bit of purple in this variegated yarn that I used. I don't know what I did with the rest of them. I'll find them when I get up, I'm sure. So I think I am going to use the purple around the green. And again, it's cotton. And again, it's your choice. It's your piece. You make it however you want. That's the great thing about knowing how to put things together like this, the simple way. Somewhere in here is an end. There it is. Pop. Doesn't mean I don't have a ball there. Okay. Oh yeah, you guys should be able to see this okay. Alrighty. We're going to make the background now. I'm reading right from the pattern. Insert a new color in any chain 2 space between 2 clusters. So, I'm going to leave my tail because I'm not sure how much I'm going to need to tie in, because I don't know that I'm going to, I might be able to work over this, but I don't think so. I think you're going to see it between the, so this might be an end that I'm going to have to weave in, or these two ends are going to end up being ends I have to weave in. So, I have my slip stitch on my hook, and I'm going to insert my new color in any chain 2 space between 2 clusters. So I'm just going to pick a different spot. That way I don't have, if I pick a different spot, I don't have my ends woven in and I won't have a clump. I'll have ends woven in all over the place and not just a clump of ends woven in one spot. So I usually pick a different space, either on a quarter way around or halfway around, just so I'm not weaving those ends over ends over ends over ends and ended up with a bulky part of my piece. So insert it into any chain 2 space between 2 clusters. So there's my 2 clusters that are in one space. And I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm just going to pull through like a slip stitch to join my yarn, and I'm going to get that little tug so you don't see the end there. And then it says chain 3. So chain 3, which you guys know how to do. A chain is just chain. Let's see. Double crochet in the same space. I'm reading this as I go. Any chain 2 space, then chain 3, which I did. Double crochet in the same space. So again, your double crochet is going to be, now I need a lighter color shirt. Double crochet is going to be yarn over, insert your hook, pull it through once, pull it through 2 loops, pull it through 2 loops. So that gives me, my chain is going to count as my double crochet, and the double crochet beside it counts as a double crochet. And then it says 3 half double crochets in the next chain space. So a half double crochet, to do a half double crochet, you would yarn over, insert your hook, pull up your loop, and now you have 3 stitches on your hook just like you would for a double crochet, but instead of doing 2 and 2, you want to kind of cut the stitch in half, which decreases its height. So you're just going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those. So it's a little bit bigger than a single crochet, but it's a little bit taller than a single crochet, and you can see all 3 of those loops there. 1, 1, 2, 3. So you just pulled through all 3 loops on that hook. It's a little bit taller than a single crochet and a little bit shorter than a double crochet. So I'm going to work 3 of those into this next space. So that's 1. Again, to do my half double crochet, I'm going to yarn over, put it through the same space, yarn over, pull it through the space, yarn over, and pull it through all 3 loops. And one more in the same space, yarn over, put it through the space, yarn over, pull up my loop, and because it's a half double, we're going to just yarn over and pull through all 3. So now we have 3 half double crochets in that loop. I'm just reading. Because for some reason this isn't making sense to me. Half double crochets. In the chain space. Okay, in the next space, and I'm sure they have their way, so I'm going to follow the pattern the way it is, and I'll understand the sequence once I get through it once or twice, or once actually. So I did my 2 double crochets here, 3 half double crochets here, and now I'm going to do 3 double crochets in the next one. 2 doubles, 3 halves, 3 doubles. So I'm going to do yarn over, pull it through 2, pull it through 2. And you can see how it's a little bit taller than the half double crochet. So we're going to do 3 of those. Yarn over, pull it through once, pull it through 2, pull it through 2, yarn over, same space, pull it through the space, yarn over, pull it through 2, yarn over, pull it through 2. Let's see. The next one, we're going to make a corner, it says. 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the next one we're going to make the corner, and the corner is going to be 3 trebles, chain 2, and then 3 trebles. And I can totally see why she's doing it this way now, because she wants to, because you're working with a circle. When you're working with a circle, the stitches on the corners need to be taller to compensate for the roundness, whereas the stitches on the top of it need to be shorter so that you ultimately end up with a square. So if you drew a square around the circle, you would come out here and then down here. So when you came out to the corner, your corner would be a bigger height from this stitch than these stitches would be from these spaces. Does that make sense? So if you drew a square around this, you know that the stitches you put here have to be longer to be able to make that square. So it is going to be a treble crochet, which sounds complicated, but to be honest with you, you did a double, which you yarned over once. A treble, you're going to yarn over twice. So you're going to yarn over once, yarn over twice. Then you're going to insert your hook into your stitch, yarn over, pull through your stitch, and all you're doing is adding height to your stitch. You're not changing the way you do stitches. You're going to pull it through 2 loops. You're going to yarn over and pull it through 2 loops. And you're going to yarn over and pull it through 2 loops. And then that stitch you made is just a little bit taller than the double crochets that we made, which is going to help give us our corner. So we're going to do 3 of those. So yarn over twice for treble. These are US standard terms. Yarn over and pull through our stitch or our space. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. We have 2 trebles there. One more, we're going to yarn over twice. We're going to insert it into the same space. Yarn over and pull it through the space. yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Those are a little bit loose for me, but that's okay. And then it tells me to chain 2, so it wants me to chain 2 for the corner, so I will. Then you can take where you did those 3 trebles, and we're going to make a corner out of this space, so you can just kind of slide these over, so that gives you a little bit more room to do your next set of trebles. So I've chained 2, 3 trebles, chain 2 for my corner. I'm going to do another treble, which is wrap twice, insert into the same space because I'm making my corner. Pull your loop through your stitch, pull your loop through 2, pull your loop through 2, yarn over, pull your loop through 2. Another one, yarn over twice, insert through the same space, yarn over, pull through your space, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That gives us our 3, our chain 2, and we have 2 so far. For our corner, we're going to make one more treble, which is yarn over twice, insert it into our space, pull it through the space, yarn over, pull it through 2, yarn over, pull it through 2, and yarn over and pull it through the last 2. So now you can see with the height of the treble crochets, well, it's going to be my daughter's drawing board with 2 little birds. Yikes, there goes my hook. 2 little birds. I told her, you need to put a 3rd little bird over there and everything will be just fine. And she says to me, why does that sound familiar? So now you see where we started. And now you see how this is going to pull out as our corner so that we get a square. So I'm going to guess that the next set of 3 stitches are going to be double crochet. So I'm going to 3 double crochet into the next space, and I'm not chaining between my granny stitches. These are double crochets because you want to decrease your height around the round part. So around the round part, and you can see how this space is higher than this space, so you want a shorter stitch in there. So the next stitch the next set of 3 are going to be half double crochets, which is, again, pull up your loop, and then just pull through all 3 on the stitch, and it makes your stitch a little bit shorter to compensate for the curve at the top. So 1, 2, again, yarn over, pull up your loop, pull through all 3. So you can see how that made that smaller, so it's like giving us our square. The next one is going to then be 3 double crochets, yarn over, through 2, through 2. And I'm going to put 3 of them in that stitch, yarn over, through 2, through 2, yarn over, through my space, through 2, through 2. And now you can see how we're building that back up to a square. So the next one we're going to do is going to be our trebles, our chain 2 and our trebles to do the next corner. So again, your treble, wrap it twice through the stitch, through 2, through 2, through 2. Yarn over, through the stitch, through 2, through 2, through 2. This is what I just showed you guys before. So yarn over twice, yarn over through your stitch, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. That gives me my 3 trebles. I'm going to chain 2 for my corner, and I'm going to do 3 more trebles in the same space. Again, if it looks like you don't have enough room, just scrunch them down and you'll get some more room. So that's 1 treble, 2 trebles and 3 trebles. The next one's going to be 3 doubles. The next one is going to be 3 half doubles. The next space, so yarn over, just pull through all 3 stitches, yarn over, pull through your loop, pull through all 3 stitches, yarn over, pull through your loop, pull through all 3 stitches. Decreases the height for the top of the circle. No. Trebles in the corner. So it's going to be trebles in your corner so that you get the height that you need to pull the corner out as a square. So the trebles are in the corner to pull the height out that you need to get the corner for your square. And then you're going to do 3 doubles. Then you're going to do your 3 doubles. So there's your 3 trebles to give you the height for the corner of the square. And because it's curved, you need a little bit of height here. So you're going to do your 3 doubles. Because this is the top of the curve, you need a little bit less height. So you're just going to do 3 half doubles. And then again 3 doubles. And then for the corner, again 3 trebles. Chain 2, 3 trebles for your corner to pull out your height. And then you're going to do your 3 doubles. And then you're going to do your 3 half doubles. And you're just going to keep, that's how you're going to work around. Again, if you want the pattern so you can follow the written pattern, I did put a link to it in my link tree. And it is a free pattern, so it's just, so now I'm going to do my 3 doubles. 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going to do my 3 trebles, my corner space, which is going to be my 3 trebles. I should just use the blue yarn so you guys could see my 3 trebles. Chain 2, 3 more trebles in the same space for your corner. Then working the next side.
Tell them I'll be in the car.
Okay. Next stitch, you're going to do your doubles. So you're going to do your 3 doubles. The next stitch at the top of your circle, you're going to do your 3 half doubles. The next stitch, you're going to do your 3 trebles for your corner. Was that right? Oh no. We did our 3 trebles, half doubles, 3 trebles, doubles, half doubles, or 3 doubles, and then this very last space we're going to work another corner. It'll give us 4 corners, and our corner again is our 3 trebles, chain 2, and our 3 trebles, that gives us our last corner. And she actually, if you look, this gives us our last corner. So you can see how the height of the trebles pulls out your grannies for the corners. And the half doubles in the center make them a little bit shorter. Now she started her round with 2 double crochets. So she did 2 double crochets, half, 3 double crochets. So she needs 1 more double crochet in this stitch there to finish out the 3 double crochets there. So that's what you're going to do. You're just going to take your yarn and you're just going to do 1 more double crochet in that beginning space that we worked with. 1 more double crochet. So here's our starting chain. Here's our starting chain and our double that we started with. We made 1 more double in that space. And we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that starting chain. We are slip stitching into the top of that chain there. Okay, so that gives you much more of a square. So now when you go around this again, it's just going to be all doubles in between each cluster. So you're going to do for your corner stitches, because you've already brought out and made the shape that you need. So now you can just go around doing your regular granny stitches. And I'm just pulling this out a little bit further so you can see in between the stitches. So in your corner spaces, you would do your 3 double crochets. I am going to chain 2 for these corners because of the way I want to make the hat. So I am going to do a chain 2 in the corners. So I'm going to do 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet in the corners. In between the next cluster, I'm going to do 3 double crochet. In between the next cluster, I'll do 3 double crochet. In between the next cluster, I'll do 3 double crochet. But before I even go that far, because I want to make a hat out of this, I kind of want to see, and I think if I make these, I don't know that I want to make them any taller. Because I think if I make them any taller, the hat's going to be too big. So I think I'm going to leave it at this. And if I need to add rows in between, I can add rows in between. And I'm not even sure I like those colors together. I have to think about that. So if I need to add rows in between, I'm going to add rows in between. But if, like, I put this on my head, that comes down a little bit. It comes down a little bit just below my ear, which is kind of where I want it. So if I put another round of granny squares on there, it's going to be way too big. So I'm going to leave that round on there just like that is, and I'm going to finish that off, and that's how I'm going to make the rest of my granny squares. Now, if you wanted to make one of these bucket hats and you wanted to make it smaller, you don't have to use this particular granny square. You can use a regular granny square and just make it the size that you want. I just made mine like this because I wanted the flowers in the middle of it. But you can just make a regular granny square so that as you're going around in your circles, you know whether or not it's going to fit your head. I will say that you probably... Now, because when I make the circle for the top part of my hat, so we're getting into the next step now. We have our granny square, right? Now we need to do some planning for the top part of the hat. And then after that, I'm going to leave it at that so that you guys can finish up to this point. And then tomorrow, but I will tell you to do the top part of the hat. So I'm going to explain to you how you're going to do the top part of the hat. So I've got 2, 4, 5. I really only have 5 So 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. See, I have a good shift. So we would want multiples of 6 to do our circle. So this gives me 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And if I have 17 by 4, yes, crochet is a lot of math. So if I have 17 times 4, because if I use 4 squares, that gives me 68. You guys following me? Oh, thank you very much. That gives me 68. So I have 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1 for this side, 16. 1 for this side, 17. And if I'm going to make 4 granny squares, 17 times 4 is 68. Is 68 divisible by 6? Probably not. Nope, it gives me 11.3. So I think, I know, I would rather go up than down, because when I stitch my granny squares together, it's going to give me a little bit of space on the sides. So if that gives me 68 stitches, I'm going to round up to the where I would have the next 6, which would give me 72. Does that make sense? So if you're working your circles in multiples of 6s, 60 would be 10 rounds, 66 would be 11 rounds, 72 would be 12 rounds. So I would then have to do 72. So to make the circle for the top of this bucket hat. Now you could just make another square to stitch on the top the same way. But I'm not. I want it to be round. I want it to be a little bit more traditional. So instead of making that 5th square to put on the very top, I'm actually going to make the circle like we did for the first bucket hat we did. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. That's the square that I did. And I just did that first round there, around there. First round there, around there. And then I figured how much I would need for my top. So I am going to do my 12 rounds of a circle to so I have 72 stitches around. And then I'm going to come back tomorrow and we're going to put it together and we're going to finish it. How's that sound? Is everybody with me so far? Did I lose anybody anywhere? Does anybody have any questions? Arlene, you're good? You're good, you're good. Awesome. Yay. Oh, Glenda, I didn't even see you jump in. I get so preoccupied in the mornings. Mitten's good. Janie's throwing me a bunch of likes there. She must like it. Norma, I didn't see you jump in either, Norma. I do apologize in the mornings if I don't see you guys jump in, because I'm really trying my hardest to get through a tutorial. And I'm going to be really, really aggravated if this does not process and I have to do the same thing I did for the last one. For those of you that weren't here for the beginning, I did manage to get part 2 of the bucket hat. I did manage to get part 2 of this bucket hat up on YouTube. So instead of my blurb that I couldn't get the video processed, I do now have this whole tutorial up there, parts 1 and part 2. So I'm busy. My brain doesn't stop. So part 1 and part 2 are up on YouTube. That is the channel. That is the playlist. Yeah, I do too. Try it with a thinner yarn. I actually have thinner yarn as well, because with the thinner yarn, but I hate to use a thinner yarn for my tutorials because not everybody has it. But I do have some sport weight cotton that I'm going to make another one. This one I'll probably throw on my table. The one I make with sport weight. The difference between it, I hope it uploads this afternoon too. The difference between using the sport weight and the worsted weight is where I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds around this, right? This is going to be this part of the hat. And you can see why I don't want to put another round around there, because then it's going to be a little bit too tall for my head. But with the worsted weight, I have 1, 2, 3 rounds around my square, whereas if I use the sport weight, it's about half the thickness. So this is the sport weight, and that's the worst. The sport weight is on top and the worsted weight's on the bottom. So if you're using a thinner yarn, only for the granny squares, I don't know. I'll probably just do it for the whole thing, because that way I can keep my measurements the same, and I don't think it'll be too floppy, because when you do your circle, even though you're going to end up with more stitches, your yarn's thinner and it's going to be tighter. So I think that even if you use a thinner yarn for the rest of it, it's still going to be good, because you're using a smaller needle with your smaller thread, which is going to pull your stitches tighter, which is still going to make it stand up. You're just using much more stitches. That's what I think. I think if you make it, you just make it with the whole thing. Do the calculations that way, and just do the whole thing with the sport weight or the smaller yarn. Again, you're using, for the smaller yarn, you're going to use a smaller stitch, smaller hook. Your stitches are going to be smaller. Right. See, that's just it. You're going to go around more times. You're going to have more stitches because you're using smaller yarn to make up for the same amount of area. So you are going to do more stitches, and they are going to be tighter because you're using a smaller hook. And because they're tighter, even though there's more stitches, it's still going to, like, it all kind of balances itself out. Does that make sense? Thicker yarn, bigger hook. It's not floppy. We got, accomplished this size. If you do the same size with smaller yarn and a smaller hook and more stitches, you're still going to get this size. You're not going to make it smaller. You're still going to get this size. So it's still not really going to be floppy. It's just going to be more work, which sometimes could be good, because you can add more detail. Like I said, with this one, I can only get 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds of this granny stitch. If I did it with the sport weight yarn, I can go around it more times than that. I just have to pay attention to how many stitches are going to be across the top, times that by how many squares I have, and make sure I have enough stitches around my circle to attach to my squares to my hat. So if that makes sense, that's the channel. Thank you for everybody that subscribed yesterday. So I might have a big head after all. No, I probably should have done 72 stitches for this instead of, I don't remember what I did. I would have to go back through the tutorial. But I probably should have done one more round and made this just a little bit bigger, so the top, so it was just a little bit looser on me, and the top was more bucket shaped because it kind of pulls in a little bit, but so the top was more bucket shaped. So I should have probably done a little bit more. Good, I'm glad that makes sense. So yeah, I'm going to let TikTok get to work on this video. If you guys want to head over there, this part of the video should be available hopefully by this evening. Hopefully within the next 3 hours. And I do have parts 1 and 2 to this hat up there I did manage to do that last night. You don't have to subscribe here. It costs money. Doesn't cost you money to subscribe there. This is the name of the playlist / podcast, and that is the name of my channel. Tomorrow, I am going to come back and we are going to finish the granny square bucket hat. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for the gifts. I really appreciate you guys. If you guys weren't here, I wouldn't be here. So I really do appreciate you guys. And later this afternoon, I'll be back on when I'm working up this, finishing up my homework so I can do tomorrow. And probably later on again tonight as well, I'll be on finishing up the rest of my homework so I can do tomorrow's tutorial and go check out my channel. I will talk to you guys tomorrow or tonight, depending on who jumps back on. Thank you so much, and I will see you for the next video.